If I had it in the budget for confetti, I would be saying this. Welcome to episode 45 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. Yes, I don't have the budget for confetti, but we are here. Well, I'm here for the 45th episode of Wacky World of Wrestling, and well, here we are. And this show title is Logical Deductions and Elementary Chaos. Elementary, my dear Watson. We need to examine the world of professional wrestling at 3:17 a.m. in the morning. After a massive gale force storm with 60-mile-per-hour winds in some places. Yes, it has been a storm-fueled evening here at the homestead for the Operations Center for Wacky World of Wrestling, and well, I'm doing okay. The storm did minimum amount of chaos, which of course was rain going sideways, but at the same time, things have been rather peaceful here. And, well, this is a show that is certainly indeed going into the category of Fizzy being random this week. Yes, I am aware that Extreme Rules happened. Yes, I am aware that Progress is now about to embark on its American tour. And there's a lot of logical elementary faults with that as well. Yes, I'm aware that TNA has somehow, some way, actually done fairly decently this year. Maybe not being based near where Yog Seraph's summer home live is probably what the benefit in that situation. Yes, I am aware that Ring of Honor is about to purge half of its roster in a shark-fueled, carnage-filled tournament to the death on a cruise boat on Halloween night. In fact, the Boat Cruise of Doom, as I'm calling it, or as some people are calling it, the Jerry Cruise, is one of the highlighted events of the year, alongside All In, and everyone else is expecting that to actually do relatively well. And well, while I certainly enjoy the fact that an independent promotion or independent business operation is attempting to emulate Super World of Sports. Wait, what's Super World of Sports, you might be asking yourself? I guess we'll start with that topic. Super World of Sports was a Japanese promotion that was owned and operated by an eyeglass company in the 1990s. Yeah, this was around the time of the Japanese yen falling apart and the economic recession that hit Japan in the late 80s and early 90s. Kind of a bad time to be investing into a wrestling promotion if you ask me, but again, I'm not an economic analyst. Although I do have a good sense of knowledge for finances and money, just by basically doing pure deductive reasoning. Again, logical deductions. Logic in professional wrestling is something that is usually frowned upon by many individuals. Either they believe that being too logical ruins the theatrical elements of professional wrestling, or that the fact that people are like, you're ruining the show's atmosphere by bringing logic into thy play of wrestling. Into thy sacred ring of arena, infidels, execute them all. Yes, while most people have the delusions of grandeur of believing that they are a Roman emperor in the middle of a coliseum, and just by doing a thumb sign, they can either execute something they don't like or, well, promote it. Try to push it to the main event and repeatedly try to for 5 years straight. Hi, Roman. How you doing? Sorry about that near consistent Twilight Zone X push that you're currently engaged in. Even your own fandom is getting annoyed at this whole perspective. Roman Reigns in a paradoxical Twilight Zone. And he just lost to King Bob. Who's King Bob? No, he's not the Recess character. It's Bobby Lashley. Yes. In this dawn of 2018, Bobby Lashley is upholding the Rocky Mountains tradition of somehow pulling off upset victories. Obviously wanted to make a tribute to Vader because he was also from the Rocky Mountains. Yes, Bobby Lashley won against Roman Reigns. And that Urukai horde you're seeing in the background is his fandom's reaction to the infidel known as Bobby Lashley beating their beloved chosen champion. No, seriously. Although they're taking it rather better than expected because, again, Roman managed to get a great match out of Bobby, apparently. One of the better matches on the card, even though the heat was non existent, and they decided to have this event, Extreme Rules, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. when there are a lot of old school fans who are currently kind of upset with WWE at this point for the lack of anything regarding Bruno Sammartino. Then, of course, we have all of the other things going on. Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins apparently had a 30-minute Iron Man match that went 40 minutes. Oh, that's typical of Seth. He basically had a match that was 40 minutes long. And Ziggy, yeah, same thing. They're all asking for extended time for a match that's going to sudden death overtime. 30 minutes of Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins. Wow, you are really trying to torment your audience there. And even though that I have softened up my stance on Seth considerably because he hasn't done anything that causes a PR agent to literally lose all of its teeth, him being stuck in what I would assume mid-card purgatory with Dolph Ziggler is okay. They wanted the main event slot. A lot of people decided that, these two should main event. And I'm like, in what infinite universe should Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler main event a pay-per-view in 2018? Less on Seth because Seth is actually doing fairly solid right now. It's the Dolph Ziggler thing that I kind of don't get. I mean, instead of Dolph, why not go with Drew McIntyre? I mean, you're trying to obviously build Drew up by eventually claymoring Ziggy into a pile of swords, which he will then proceed to backwards bump into 80,000 times and oversell the dang thing. But regardless, Drew McIntyre is clearly the guy that they want to push in this situation, but they also know that Drew is kind of got a really bad Scottish curse when it comes to injuries. When he was NXT champion, he almost, well, he accidentally injured himself in ring when he took a bump against the match against Almas, where he repeatedly took several bumps that injured his ribs. And he also injured his shoulder in the match. Again, he is a pro wrestler, and he's a guy that has been around this business for a very long time. I mean, the British wrestlers, most of them debuted in the mid 2000s as youngsters. And, well, Drew is no exception to this rule. In fact, he's basically the last of the three original signees, including Sheamus, Paul Burchill, and Wade Barrett to be in the WWE at this point. And while he certainly was touted as a great chosen one, apparently Vince has watched Braveheart way too many times and decided to push Drew McIntyre based on that, when he was completely inexperienced and, well, really needed a lot more time before being brought into WWE. Now he's back, and he's second to Dolph Ziggler. I do love the eventual Game of Thrones backstabbing involving Drew and Ziggy, like I said. But again, Dolph Ziggler is now the Intercontinental Champion and is basically trying to do the same thing that Miz did with the belt last year. So, guys, you've kind of run out of the coverboard of ideas there, and I know that the fantasy bookers in the audience will be raising their hands and saying, "Ooh, I got an idea! I got an idea! I got an idea!" I'm like, dude, ebbs and flows. The IC belt has had a really good run over the last few years. It has somehow managed to avoid being horribly cursed and having 6 to 8 different champions in the span of a year, ranging from horrific injuries to, in Ryback's case, well, eating a salad, getting sick for 90 days. And no, it didn't have any sort of germs or diseases in it. It was just a salad. Somebody threw a salad at Ryback, and, well, Ryback reacted as any creature that purely relies on a diet of meat. He reacted with pure terror. I mean, if you want to keep Ryback away from a wrestling show, all you have to do is basically plant an entire row of lettuce around his house. And basically, that is like it's like keeping a cursed object in a castle. Or basically the equivalent of. Yes, my random ramblings at 3:26 a.m., folks. um, so besides using lettuce to keep Ryback to keep the Ryback away, which will cause a few of you to completely chuckle, um, Dolph Ziggler and Seth Rollins main eventing in 2018. That seemed like it seemed like something that would be really good in 2014 or 2015 if Dolph cut back on his excessive bumping and Seth Rollins could actually sell his leg, without actually looking like he isn't selling his leg or actually doing moves on his leg and causing any old school traditionalist to promptly pop a blood vessel, seeing him attempting to sell. Uh, but regardless, you have that. Bobby Lashley won against Roman Reigns, which again, I'm like, okay, cool. I was actually going to go with Lashley over Roman in this situation since they seem to be wanting to make a rival for Roman. That one wrestler that Roman Reigns can't beat. And it's Bobby Lashley. The sense of irony is strong in this one. So the last guy that WWE attempted to super push who wasn't named John Cena, who wasn't named CM Punk, who wasn't named Randy Orton, and the hundreds of thousands of times they did that, who wasn't named Big Show, who liked to punch people in the face, who wasn't Triple H, who apparently, if rumors are to be believed, and folks, remember my stance on rumors. I generally don't believe what rumors say, and heck, I don't even believe the scoopsters half the time, or even most of the time when it comes to these shows. But when watching Extreme Rules myself, I definitely feel as though that this show was produced by somebody else. This was not a Vince show, obviously. Like I've said before, Vince has been reducing his capacity behind the scenes for years at this point. He wants to focus on his fantasy football project, the XFL, and it is both a wonderful blessing, as I've said on the last episode, and a wonderful, wonderful curse, because now you're suddenly thinking, Triple H, our great savior, all hail H! Side note, if I hear the words all hail and Triple H in the same sentence, I'm usually probably going to procure a giant oversized Japanese mallet, cartoonishly oversized Japanese mallet, and promptly wallop somebody for saying that. 9 times out of 10, it will probably be somebody from Full Sail. Just a hunch. But regardless, the idea of Triple H as a booker, in theory, seems like a logical step. I mean, Triple H basically booked the Reign of Terror. He let, the bookers and the agents all book the Reign of Terror to be as confusing, as slog, and melodramatic as possible. Guess how most of the matches in ER turned out? Yeah, they kind of resembled Triple H matches, didn't they? Most of them, in fact. The long, pretentious selling, the over dramaticism of moves, the screwy finishes. Oh, the screwy finishes. I mean, most of us were expecting Ellsworth to escape out of that shark cage and be eaten alive by the shark known as Asuka. And also, there's apparently some sources out there that say Asuka's contract is up in September. But again, who knows? Carmella's still SmackDown Women's Champion, and Alexa Bliss is still has a ginormous Ronda Rousey shaped target on her back, and Ronda decided to imitate a Girl Scout troop this week on Raw and proceeded to maul Alexa to near death. Oh, that's the best way to get yourself a championship opportunity in WWE, and basically act like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park and promptly eat that lawyer. Yeah, that's what Ronda did in that situation. So you have that. You have the women's division doing women's division things. You have the weird booking. A lot of people complained about the booking from what I've seen, and I go, it's a Triple H run show. What do you expect at this point? Well, NXT has such logical storytelling, you say. Need I remind you of how convoluted and insane the Ciampa Gargano feud has become? I mean, it's basically like reading a mid-90s comic book. Now, side note, I've read very few 90s comic books, but I have read enough reviews about them of the grittiness, edginess, shoulder pads, pouches, and nonsensical storytelling because all of the writers promptly left, or at least the good ones promptly left. And we were left with the crazy artists. Those mad, 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 mad comic book artists. Much like those mad, 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 mad pro wrestling writers. Or mad, 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 mad bookers who are also former wrestlers. So, Billy Kidman, who was formerly of WCW, and Triple H were apparently running the show while Vince was talking to them for either communicative telepathy. Boy, that must be a nightmare, or has actually figured out what a Bluetooth headset is. Which is even more horrifying if you think about it, because Vince McMahon and technology do not mix or coexist with one another. So, yeah, you have Triple H booking a B show, and it ends up exactly how you would think it would go. It actually kind of reminded me of a lot of those pay-per-views from the 2000s era where Triple H was the champion, and also reminded me of 1990s WCW pay-per-views where a lot just kind of just happened, and nothing made any sense if you thought about it from a logical perspective. Boy, I'm using that show title a lot in this episode. From the logical perspective of this it doesn't make a lot of sense, and this show didn't make a lot of sense. The idea of Nia Jax breaking weapons so that she could prove how tough she is. I mean, Nia, um, are you trying to be Tommy Dreamer? I mean, are you trying to do like an ECW style match? And there's also been speculation that Paul Heyman has started doing a lot of writing, which also indicates that Triple H is taking over more power. As I talked about last episode, the of that episode, and yeah, it's like when I talked about this on episode 44, I said that if Triple H is basically taken over already. And I said, Be careful what you wish for here, because the evil that you don't know is much more terrifying than the evil that you do know." And like I said, Vince is incredibly entirely predictable. Hunter isn't. Because Hunter will say and do one thing, and then he will look over to his little globe that has NXT stabbed through little dart pins through each continent in the world and say, "Hmm, today I shall conquer the nation of Luxembourg with my brand of wrestling and my army of possibly overpaid free agents who are probably basking in the glory of being, well, paid as much as they are at this point, even if wrestling pay is kind of below the mark, considering how much work that a WWE roster member has to go through. But regardless, he's basically become the Dan Snyder of wrestling promotions. He's signing every free agent under the sun and is stuffing them into NXT like a shopaholic on the Christmas holiday shopping season, who stuffed everything into their storage unit, and the storage unit is about to explode. At least Timmy is going to get his presents early this year when the garage door completely burst open. Too bad he'll probably be opening the presents from a full body cast as they pile on top of him. But regardless, Hunter is that kind of person who sees the shiny objects in a room and goes, "Ooh, I want to do that. Oh, I want to do that too." And a lot of these wrestling veterans really have been encouraging that behavior from him. He's a smart guy, okay? Was the smartest of the clique. He's the only one that's really in a position of power these days, because everybody else is, well, basically a walking, talking PSA for the dangers of drugs and alcohol and wild parties in pro wrestling. And it's unfortunate to see, but at the same time, it's good that there's examples there like that to showcase to the future generations that don't do the things that they did when they were in their prime years of misspent days of youth. Looking at what is going on right now in WWE, it's interesting. I still maintain the same attitude that I did in episode 44. The idea of, okay, Raw's doing this, SmackDown's doing this, NXT's doing this, and people will say, they have the most talented roster in years and they're doing nothing with it. Ask how many sports teams that you've ever seen, and ask how many of them had so many top tier, high end talent, and yet they never went to the big dance. That's WWE. They are every single one of those so-called champions of the off-season, paper champion teams that you've ever seen. They've got talent, yes. How they use that talent, and how, if the talent themselves doesn't trip over their own 2 feet while navigating the shark-infested, demon-infested, and Chifulian-infested waters of WWE, Mordor, and of course Isengard. And like I said, even in Isengard, there are issues. The Gargano Champa story is completely muddled in some form of insanity. At least we're finally getting a proper alignment for Johnny Gargano as a despicable, vile heel, and Champa as our heroic babyface, going against the other heroic babyface in Aleister Black. It says something a lot about your promotion when the guy who is your babyface champion at this point has the gimmick of Hail Satan. Yeah. I'm not kidding. I mean, Aleister Black is basically would be a heel in 1980s Florida, is a babyface in mid 2000s Florida. Says a lot about the territory, mind you. But at the same time, Aleister has started struggling as champion. He did not have exactly the best match with Lars Sullivan. It was a solid enough match, except for one rather well known at this point botch where he did the Black Mass and it didn't work out. But he goes from one Jekyll and Hyde inspired monster that will most likely give those who do not like Braun Strowman nightmares if they witness one of his matches, to the utter nightmare fueled reaction of Tommaso Ciampa as his challenger. I didn't really talk about this last time, but Ciampa as a challenger for the NXT Championship does make some sense, but he's like fifth or sixth right now as far as wrestlers who should be challenging for the main heavyweight belt. That also includes, I mean, like when Candice LeRae is ahead of you in that list, and she's currently second at this point because realistically it's her, Gargano, Champa, Ricochet, EC3, but suddenly his momentum has been sapped. Cassius Ono, who's also had his momentum smacked, and of course, smashed into a well. And then, of course, Velveteen Dream. I still don't get Velveteen Dream. He's having solid matches, but at the same time, I'm going, how is this going to work? I mean, Velveteen Dream, to his credit, has really surprised a lot of people. He's also had good matches against Aleister Black, of all people. Aleister Black had a great match with him. But then he has matches with Cassius Ohno, and I go, I really liked what they did with the gimmick, but the execution left a lot to be desired. Although I did like the bit where he was basically cosplaying as Muhammad Ali. And that really worked out. It was one of those classic boxer versus wrestler matches that from the 70s that either will make you smile happily at the silliness of it all, or if you're a purist, you'll go into pure homicidal rage and promptly decide to eat the film. Yeah, you do you, whichever one you pick. Also of note, everybody should probably go watch that Island Death match with Masasato versus Antonio Inoki, and not just because Masasato passed away yesterday from a long bout with Parkinson's. He was 76 years of age, but at the same time, I've seen the Island Death match. It is fun. It is a fun match where Inoki and where two grumpy old men get stuck on an island for an hour and have to literally brawl throughout an entire island. It shows you the pure insanity of Antonio Inoki and why I feel that Inoki is far, far ahead of Satan himself, Vince McMahon, as far as the nuttiest wrestlers who have ever wrestled or non-wrestlers who are booking a promotion. I mean, look, Vince doesn't, in my mind, even crack the top 5. There's Von Erich, Stu Hart, Antonio Inoki, anything by Anshuni Onita, aka Grandpa Explosion. And let me think here. Anybody running the NWA Mid South? Jim Crockett. Yep, Jim Crockett Promotions. Or Ted Turner, if you want to go with Ted Turner, because he had plenty of nutty ideas that his vassal, Eric Bischoff, put into motion. Kind of find it funny that people like worship Eric Bischoff so much when I go, he was the one guy that wasn't chucked out of the 37th floor of the Turner Tower. He was the one guy who survived when everybody else got fed to the sharks and the lawyers. Because for those of you who forget, Ted Turner is probably the one person who has either exceeded or have matched Vince's insanity at every single turn. When Ted wants something, Ted gets something. He wanted a basketball team. He bought the Atlanta Hawks. He wanted a baseball team. He bought the Braves. He wanted to invest heavily into NASCAR. He invested in NASCAR. He wanted to invest in cartoons. He created Cartoon Network from old films that he had bought in 1980 in the 1980s from an AMGM library. The idea that Vince McMahon is the source of all of pro wrestling's problems is a myth that I find extraordinarily hysterical. Because while Vince is a satanic demon monster who will plainly admit it to you if you ever asked him, he's not the sole problem in pro wrestling. Frizz Von Erich had a small roster and decided to kick Gary Hart out of his territory because he wouldn't do anything about the drug problem that was infesting Texas promotions at the time. Gary Hart became so horrified of how bad things were going, he voluntarily left and retired for a few years. I mean, he got back into wrestling in the 80s because he had to pay his bills and because the passion had come back, for him to do the sorts of things he wanted to do. But when Gina Hernandez passed away in 1984, that's when the Texas territory died. It wasn't when one of the Von Erichs went. It was unfortunate that it happened, but at the same time, here's one thing about the Von Erichs that people constantly forget about. The Von Erichs were ranchers. You want to know who ranchers have what thing that ranchers have ample supply to? Steroids, human growth hormone, HGH. I mean, it's the stuff that they inject cows with. And a bunch of ranchers have basically unlimited access to this stuff. And you wonder why the Texas territory fell apart. But that's the reason for it. And it's something that's often under-discussed. The Von Erichs were ranchers. They had access to this stuff. And of course, a lot of wrestlers are going to want to come into their territory and, well, work for pennies on the dollar, but at the same time, they get the goods. And a lot of people want to skirt and dance around that issue, but the Von Erichs basically contributed to the destruction of the Texas territory because everybody got burnt out and on what they call the gas, and they couldn't work long technical matches anymore because you would get blown up after about 5-10 minutes, and it became power and looks over technical finesse. Where if you look at World Class from like 1982-83, World Class 1982 is actually one of my favorite looking points for a promotion to look into because there's a lot of things about this promotion that weren't around when the time it went to the golden years. In fact, I haven't really been able to watch a lot of the golden year episodes on the WWE network because I just find them so uninteresting. When it was before the peak, it was interesting. When it was at the peak, it is as boring a slog as ever. And I know some old school fans might find issue with but that's generally how I think about when I think of wrestling promotions. I like to see what happened before the so-called peak that everybody talks about. What was this promotion like before it became super duper uber popular, as the kids say? World Class in 1982, very underrated year for a wrestling promotion. Mid South in 1981 before it became peak in 1983-84, also a very underrated era. I mean, basically, what you have in this situation is you have a guy like Sergeant Slaughter was a very weird heel for his era in 1981. He was an army military guy who was treated as the bad guy well before anybody else was doing that. And he was the drill sergeant, and funny thing that people forget about Sergeant Slaughter is that he was a heel for a long stretch of his career in the early 80s. He didn't become Mr. G.I. Joe until the mid 80s when G.I. Joe kicked off. But at the same time, it's like, if you look at the older eras of the territories, you'll find that it wasn't just Vince that was the problem. It was the territories themselves. And people saying again, the territories are dead. The territories are dead. And I go, there's still wrestling promotions in your neck of the woods. It's not dead. Settle down. maybe actually run your promotion like, I don't know, a business, and maybe your territory will be like the olden days of the territories, or will be exactly the same as the territory days, where they pack 2 or 300 people into a small bingo hall and have a wrestling match for several hours, give or take, with 5 or 6 matches on the card, or 7 or 8 matches on the card, depending on what you did. When I look at something like, and of course, we have to talk about the other elephant in the room, which is elementary chaos. Now, the chaos theory is basically a free for all of what can go wrong, probably will go wrong, and is a theory that I have subscribed to since the very first episode of Wacky World of Wrestling. And the idea is that even with every perfect piece into a puzzle, the puzzle will still fall over because one piece on that tower is bent. And while this is definitely a theory that is more correct than incorrect because of the nature of the beast, again, nature of the beast, it's in the beast's nature to be pure unadulterated chaos, because that is how people feel comfortable in being in pro wrestling. They don't want to be in what they feel is a safe, confined environment. They don't want to be seen as one of those squares who follows the rules, who's kind and courteous. They want to be the wild child outlaw with the 6-shooter and the chewing tobacco. And no, I'm not just referring to Sammy Callahan. They want to be the outlaw. They want to be the pirate. They want to be the person who is not in that universe. They don't want to be Office Joe. They want to be Pirate Joe or Outlaw Joe or whatever your, whatever your morning, whatever you're thinking in that situation. Nobody wants to be the morning Joe in the confines of wrestling. They want to be the person who was either too big or not ugly enough for the drama club to come into a profession where they can be in the drama club. The football player that wasn't allowed in the drama club, or the baseball player, or any of the sports teams players who weren't allowed in the drama club because either their father said no, or their mother said no, or they themselves were rejected because, again, they were either too big or not ugly enough for the drama club. And yes, they do have standards in the drama club, from what I've been told. They have a standard of if you're not a certain amount of ugly or short, because you're not dwarfing over, because if you're too big, you're going to dwarf over the lead, and the lead is probably going to drop a sandbag over your head for outstaging them on the stage floor, or prop, or dump a bucket of paint on you, and you have to go full carry on them. But again, that's the fun nature of these shows, is that wonderful randomness that also happens to have a weird thing about staying on target, which this show is. Continuing down the rabbit hole of madness that is NXT, what exactly are they doing with Ricochet? I mean, seriously, Ricochet just seems like your typical Dan Snyder signing of, we need a flashy free agent player who's been in other promotions for years and most certainly fits them better than in WWE. Let's have him feud with Velveteen Dream and have an indie spot fest match at the last takeover. And also completely botch the Ciampa Gargano feud while we're at it. Basically, removing any and all sympathy you had for Johnny Gargano beforehand by making him a laughing, giggling copy of the Joker. Seriously, if they go full Joker with Johnny Gargano, don't say I didn't warn you. Because this is the kind of babyface that Triple H likes to book. The so-called edgy anti-hero babyface. Pure babyfaces in NXT do not go over very well. Certainly there have been successes, example, Bayley. But at the same time, NXT has been going more towards a shade of gray mentality with their babyfaces and heels, because when they debut on the main roster, and this is the volatile solution that the creative has come up with. And when I say creative, I mean Triple H and a bunch of yes men that basically have to bow down to his whims, or otherwise, well, there's a giant golden shovel and a room full of cultists with knives that probably want to take their essence down to the Lazarus pit that keeps Triple H healthy. Yes, I do believe there is a sacrificial altar at Full Sail University. If it wouldn't be Florida without it. As someone who has actually lived in the state before, survived a hurricane, and my dad survived that place for 10 years, as I've talked about before on the episode where I talked about the Donner Parties of Pro Wrestling. The last time I talked about the Donner Parties of Pro Wrestling. So, Ricochet is in a situation where now he's the flashy guy that has to do the flashy matches with other wrestlers, despite the fact that he's probably had a lot of these flashy matches on the indies before with these wrestlers. Pretty certain he's wrestled EC3 before. Pretty certain he's wrestled Keith Lee before. And sure, those will be great spectacle matches, but here's the problem, guys. These aren't fresh matchups. These are matchups that have already been done before. You're basically taking one of the vices of the super indie concept, and now you're injecting it like Bane injects venom into your bloodstream of NXT, and going all extreme indie matches, bros. Look at how extreme we are. Look at how different we are. We're booking all of these indie matches that the main roster wouldn't even book. Please support the yellow. Please support our black and yellow brand, as we are so totally different from main roster WWE and not some kind of diabolical corporate evil entity that is going to sacrifice your very soul. No siree at all. No souls are sacrificed here in a glorious land of Isengard. None will be sacrificed here in NXT, the safe, holy land of wrestling. Yes, I might be bitter and somewhat negative towards NXT as a whole because it basically butchers the concept of a combination of an independent wrestling promotion when it really isn't. It's just a corporate offshoot of WWE, and it also botches the corporate offshoot by being really weird. I mean, their booking is weird. Their writing is weird. Even during the Ryan Ward era, it was weird. Who do we push as our top babyface act? Let's push Enzo and Cass, which we are now beginning to regret as a decision in this timeline. Or have been regretting as a decision in this timeline. You had one job, Cruiserweight Division. Sacrifice Roadkill to a demonic god. You failed. I can't be too mad at you right now because Buddy Murphy and Mustafa Ali are saving your division, but Cedric Alexander has done Cedric Alexander things and once again is showcasing that, Ring of Honor wasn't just the only problem with pushing this guy to the moon. I mean, I like Cedric Alexander, mind you. But every time that the guy has even gotten a monicum of the spotlight thrown in his general direction, he reacts as the equivalent of an ant being set on fire by a magnifying glass. He disappears for ages at a time. This happened in Ring of Honor. Admittedly, that was due to a botched heel turn and him attempting to do the Porta Prez style of offense, which was whack his opponents in the knee with a wrench, which I'm pretty certain that was gimmick infringement right there. But regardless, Mustafa Ali, Buddy Murphy, that was a good match. Go check it out. They did a lot of stuff. And like I said, once the vision of Sauron is away from your product, that's when your product becomes at least good. Now, admittedly, here's the thing. The one positive in this situation of Vince booking the Cruiserweight division was that there was character introduced into the Cruiserweight division, which if you've ever seen a Cruiserweight wrestler, the one thing they've always had trouble with is balance. They either do a lot of flippy moves to try and impress an audience, or they go into the whole character thing where they're just like, I'm a cool, edgy heel that shops at Hot Topic. That's nice. It's nice. Unfortunately, a lot of other people who are also wrestlers also shop at Hot Topic, and you're probably going to need to go with a different outfit because everybody else is wearing the same thing. Yeah, originality in wrestling, that's kind of a difficult concept, but it's one that's actually doable. I'm actually kind of surprised that a lot of wrestlers haven't gone and joined their local city historical societies and looked up old architecture. Think of the pro wrestling t-shirts you could make. that aren't involved with something involving copyright infringement and in fact are in the public domain. A lot of wrestlers actually have, like for example, the aforementioned Ricochet probably is a part of the Louisville, Kentucky Historical Society, and well, he looked at his hometown and actually did some original designs for T-shirts. Same can be said for Keith Lee, I believe. But regardless, it's like you have a situation where now NXT is the one where everything's all good and whole, apparently. And now you have the Mae Young Classic coming up, the second edition. And while I'm excited for it, I mean, certainly the prospect of Ginny making everybody fashionable is a cool thing to see. But Nicole Matthews? Okay, I get she was an alternate in the last Mae Young Classic, but you really could have used her in the first one. And everybody comparing her to Stephanie is kind of funny also. It probably will no longer be funny when she takes one of her faves and does the old Porta Perez style of attack with a wrench and go full Tanya Harding. Yeah, Tanya Harding, the one who injured Nancy Kerrigan's leg. Yeah, the Canadian Ninjas do that style of offense. Or at least Porta did before she retired, you know. So yeah, Elementary Chaos is definitely something that is probably going to affect the Mae Young Classic. Okay, Io Shirai got signed by WWE. How many more free agents are you going to stuff into that Dead Sea Scrolls chest of yours, Hunter? And it's not even, stealing away from the indies. I go, okay, that's fine. You do you, man. Just, that's fine. I mean, it's actually really a good thing that a lot of these wrestlers are being signed by NXT because it's now opening up spots for other wrestlers to come in and try and do their thing. Some with success and others with failures. But again, that's really one of the bigger issues is sort of a sameness. The super indie concept as a concept is really something that should only be done for shows that are like seasonal events, maybe once or twice a year. You do a ginormous super indie WrestleMania style show where we fly everybody in on a small, tiny cargo plane and hope it doesn't crash at the airport. 'Cause we don't want another plane crash of 76 to happen to the wrestling world now, do we? That birthed Ric Flair. We all know how horrifying that went. Well, actually, it was relatively successful, but at the same time, it spawned a whole generation of Ric Flair clones and Ric Flair style matches, which are long, plodding, tedious, and now I'm probably now hated by the entirety of the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. I think Charlotte's good. I like the Woo a lot better than Rick, but that's because Charlotte actually has a personality that isn't a lounge lizard that should probably be chucked in through a window. That's Ric Flair's personality is lounge lizard who will likely be chucked out of a window by a ginormous 450-pound biker named Tiny. I mean, I never cared for that gimmick because it wasn't a gimmick. It was Ric Flair's personality. And also Ric Flair's legendary ability to be horrifically bad at money. Yes, we're pushing that on the nation's youth as well as everybody else who are horrifically bad with finances. Yes, that's a real good example in wrestling. I mean, it's a great gimmick, but again, it also showcases in that context, yeah, a guy who's horrible with money and probably has about at least 65 paternity suits. Yep, that's a gimmick and a wrestler, all right. As I roll my eyes into the back of my head. And while the Ric Flair fans proceed to promptly pick up their pitchforks and torches, well, we'll now focus on, of course, once again, the main roster. We talked about that earlier in the show, but as I will now talk about, women's division's doing okay. They've got a lot of their spectacle matches going on. We'll see what SmackDown does. Well, here's the thing about that. Shinsuke Nakamura apparently defeated a yokai. At least that's what I think Jeff Hardy is supposed to be representing this time. I'm never really sure with that person. I mean, he's like, is he trying to be Brother Nero? He just looks like one of those yokai demons. Also has the same weakness as AJ Styles. He got kicked in the nads by Randy Orton. Oh yeah, Randy Orton's back too. Apparently, if you say his name 5 times, He appears out of nowhere and randomly RKOs things, unless you're standing by a pile of garbage cans. Yeah, he has an innate fear of trash cans after pulling his shoulder after accidentally injuring his shoulder taking out the garbage. So clowns, mimes, reflective surfaces like mirrors and garbage containers. That should ward off the Randy Orton if you ever case get attacked by the apex predator or viper or whatever catchphrase of the week they decided to label upon Randy for this particular time. So Randy is either a heel again, which is his preferred alignment, or he's a babyface for destroying Jeff Hardy. I'm gonna go with the latter at this point because it's Jeff Hardy. And Shinsuke Nakamura is the United States champion. I look forward to that being relabeled the 100 kg Japanese championship. You know, it's much more prestigious than the United States championship. Although the United States championship has always had a solid run, but they haven't done one of those like repeats gimmicks in a while. Also, they could reintroduce that sumo guy from the Greatest Royal Rumble. The mere idea of him squashing Jeff Hardy to death is making me very happy at this point, as a fan of sumo wrestling. You could squash Randy to death too. That would make a lot of people happy too. Hmm. Anybody on the SmackDown roster that they don't like, they could probably squash with an angry sumo wrestler. That could work. Yeah, that could definitely work. Feel free to steal that idea, by the way, if anybody's listening. I know a lot of you are gonna go, "Oh God, Fizz, don't encourage them," but I'm like, dude, they're gonna go with it regardless of if it could curtails to your fantasy booking or not. Like I said, they just see a fantasy writer as a fantasy writer, and they often develop an incredible inferiority complex about it, or a massive amount of envy because you've showcased your writing abilities. Whereas I'm like, here, dude, here's something. Here's something that you can present at the office, and somebody will like it. Hideki Sumi squashing Jeff Hardy to death. Shinsuke Nakamura with a sumo bodyguard. I mean, it works for Bad Luck. It worked for Bad Luck Fale, who now runs a stable full of angry Tongans who are now starting to murder the Bullet Club, which I am smiling greatly with great envy and joy. Although Tama Tonga's not a cool heel. Tonga, embrace your babyface roots. You guys are babyfaces for just trying to destroy the Bullet Club. I smile greatly as Haku promptly pile drives Spaghetti Hair, Kenny Omega, into oblivion, and tries to eat the Young Bucks. Spot Monkey Stew. That sounds delicious to me. And then there's that Rhodes boy, who picks the wrong side yet again and promptly gets eaten alive by the Tongans. Oh, this is becoming a great angle already, and I'm not even a regular viewer of New Japan since Shibata headbutted himself into retirement, as I said beforehand. I'm like, if you would go with an interpromotional feud, you would have Aku invade WWE, promptly end AJ Styles, because again, another former member of the Bullet Club there. Anybody who's former Bullet Club gets mauled to death. Unless you're Finney McBrogue, in which case you promptly take over again and try to be a bunch of cool heels. Whatever the heck cool heels is. We're cool because we're bad and we have leather jackets and we snarl at things. Dude, you look like a poser who's about to rob a convenience store. You don't look intimidating in the slightest. Seriously, when I saw, and this is a little sidetrack here, when I saw a filthy Tom Lawler, who's a retired MMA fighter who is now into pro wrestling, and saw their Team Filthy gimmick, I went, you're wearing tube socks and have a butler uniform on and are wearing a ski mask that makes it look like you're about to rob a convenience store, which in Florida is basically the equivalent of going to the convenience store. But again, it's like, what is your gimmick? What is your thing? You're an MMA fighter, and yet Simon Grimm is the guy that's Simon Grimm / Simon Gotch is the one that's doing all of the ye old timey grappling, while Tom sits in the back and actually bees a really good promo. Tom Lawler, really good promo. Not so sold on his wrestling ability yet, but again, he has time to improve. So you have that. There's another logical deduction there, and I think I should probably start talking about the indies since I've talked about main roster WWE. And oh yes, Rusev Day didn't win over AJ. Rusev, you had one job: kick the hobo into oblivion, acquire shiny thing, get bouquet of flowers, and a freshly caught fish. Which you could promptly chuck at the nearest Bullet Club fan, and you probably would accidentally knock out 5 of them. Given your amazing throwing ability, that will no doubt get you signed by the Tennessee Titans when they run out of quarterbacks. Seriously, Rusev as quarterback of the Titans, Summer Rae as the quarterback of the Bears. Cleveland will probably be needing wrestlers to fill in positions on their roster because it's Cleveland. Although many will probably say no or flee the state and take bookings elsewhere. I'm going on an international tour. No, I did not just get contacted by the Cleveland Browns to fill their place kicker position after their 95th place kicker went down to injured reserve, and then I was stuck with a on their roster with a busboy and a 95-year-old grandmother. Yes, that is the Cleveland Browns' roster at this point. It's better than the Bills. Running back, guard, center, and we have another quarterback that's like Rob Johnson. Oh, the lovely nightmares our season's going to be, isn't it? So we have MLW, which is an interesting little product. They're releasing a show called MLW Fusion, which is free on the BN Sports network, and I've seen about 7 episodes of the product so far, and it's interesting. It's definitely in the year one stage where a lot of the pieces are coming together. They're using a lot of journeymans and veterans that were released or cut and trying to build up something interesting. One of the writers is Alex Greenfield, so it's really interesting to see him work his magic. And they seem to be one of the few American promotions that knows how to book Jimmy Havoc. Which, if you haven't seen a Jimmy Havoc match, he's a deathmatch wrestler who's also really good at technical wrestling. It's a very different experience than what you would normally expect from a deathmatch wrestler. Really interesting indeed. So you have MLW, which is basically taking over from WWN Evolve, because if you didn't remember our Flow Slam episode, well, WWN is kind of on fire at this point. The blaze I can still see from my house from the Flow Scam. I mean, Flow Slam. You trusted a Florida company? A company based in Florida to actually be able to do a job involving streaming content, and it blew up in everybody's faces, especially when you kept changing people who had to hold the bag. Here, you hold the bag. You could do something with it. No, you can do it this time. We fired that last guy out of a trebuchet into a lake full of alligators. And maybe a few were accidental crocodiles. Were those alligators or were those crocodiles? I can't remember. Anyway, you get the job, Skippy. I mean, Flow Slam as a concept, it was way too expensive. Yes, because of the startup cost. You have startup cost, and it's that situation where $20 a month for a streaming service, or it's $20 for a couple of months of streaming service. I can't remember exactly what the terms were, but I'm like, okay, awkward. And now you have Club WWN, which is basically the last discovered of Please Notice Us, and apparently Shimmer is now getting into the streaming game. Okay, show of hands. How many souls and how many Faustian bargain contracts did Shimmer sign to get into streaming? This is a promotion that, like PWG, is not evolved with the times in any way. Speaking of Evolve, Evolve is doing things, I guess. They're doing okay. But Shimmer is in a situation where they are now getting into streaming. About time, guys. You're like 10 years late at the ball game. Aren't you supposed to be a promotion that is like ahead of the curve, not behind it by decades, centuries, eons? And the same thing with PWG. I mean, all it took was a PayPal error to get into a bigger venue. And because, of course, of the long-standing feud and one of my top feuds of the year, Super Dragon versus Technology. So you have that. You have the Midwest, which I've talked about is a raging tire fire that is still burning at this point. New England territory, which is a Tufulian nightmare that eats the souls of young wrestlers and spits it out, and you have bitter, angry veteran wrestlers that haven't gone anywhere and aren't doing anything of note. So you have that. CZW is an unkillable cockroach. What about the things across the pond? Let's see. The two vassal states. Insane Championship Wrestling has lived up to its name, as apparently their booker has been possessed by the ghost of ECW in the past. The Christmas ghost of ECW, now possessing your local wrestling promotions who want to be all hardcore and extreme without understanding that ECW was kind of not that as well. It was basically a regional Pennsylvania promotion with hardcore matches and some technical wrestling thrown in. I mean, like I said, if you look at the promotions before the glory years, you'll find out that that promotion was actually really good, like ECW in 1993-94. I've actually watched a few episodes from that era of time, including the one of the greatest short matches of all time, 911 versus Doink the Clown. No, seriously, really, really good match. I mean, if there is a if there is a standard of excellence for a big scary wrestler, 911 is that standard. He's the guy that goes, arrives, promptly chokeslams somebody, chokeslams them again at the command of his master, and then promptly leaves to go get a soda. That's 911 in a nutshell. They probably would be going for a beer instead of a soda now that I think about it. But again, I don't know. With a lot of these wrestlers, they watch they watch their diet so carefully. It probably would just be a bottle of water for 911's case. Dude, I need to look intimidating. But I'm also going on one of those new age yoga hippie diets. I'm gonna go choke slam this guy. It's that idea of looking at something from the past. Like early Taz matches are really cool to watch when he was the Tasmaniac, or when Sabu actually had a lot more mobility in 93, 94 than he did after his injuries. And also, babyface Tommy Dreamer, the most hated man in any area. Babyface Tommy Dreamer is so cool to watch, as is Surfer Sandman. I mean, seriously, look at a promotion before they became a peak and famous, and you'll find out that that promotion actually was really cool before the fame, the glory, and the literal mountain of drugs that consumed them whole. Yeah, vices of pro wrestling. I mean, you seek the fame, the glory, and the fortune, but you don't even realize that those vices are staring you right in the face like a pair of rigged dice. So yeah, and then we had Progress, which is, as I've dubbed, the British Leyland of wrestling promotions. They have no roster depth to speak of, and they are relying on a lot of their young wrestlers to stay healthy during this whole USA tour. Progress, like the British, is invading America. Hopefully, this goes better than the War of 1812, or the time that we kicked the country out after we kicked the British out in 1781. Hopefully, this goes better than the Battle of Yorktown, because that's possibly what's going to be happening in this situation. Because Progress is going to be touring 5 to 6 cities in a span of about a week and a half. And they're relying on a lot of foreign talent from both the USA and from WXW in Germany to fill their card. Which, again, for those of you who may not be aware of what British Leyland is, British Leyland was one of the largest car conglomerates in Britain. It was also the 5th largest company of car manufacturers in the world. And it was a complete mess. If you go back to the glorious year of like 1978, which Progress recently did a show called Progress 1978, shows how kind of out of touch they are, that they don't realize that Yes, I mean, it's cool to do a nostalgia vintage show, but I also want you to take a look at the list of number of events that Progress is going to do or has done in 2018. I'll wait for you in a second there before you come back from looking up at the page on Wikipedia. But what I'm going to say is this: Progress had a disastrous first run in America. They had an okay run in New Orleans, but again, that was one city, that was one town. It wasn't like anything that was particularly serious, or was, but it was basically self-funded by the vassal, by the Lord and Emperor of Progress at this point, which is WWE. Hunter, you have absolutely no idea what you've gotten yourself into in this one. Yes, I know Regal says that it is a great promotion with a lot of good wrestlers, but you're asking theater people and musicians to not go completely bonkers and completely throw everything into disarray. Much like Progress's booking has been, which has been a point of contention for a lot of people this year. Oh, I see you're back and you're sheet white. You just looked at Progress's Wikipedia upcoming events page, didn't you? Did you see the number of events that they've done, including co-promoted events? They really do believe they are the center of the universe, and I'm not just making a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy joke for the sake of it, folks. Progress is doing 42 events this year. 42! That includes co-promoted events with Australian promotions and WXW and WWE. 42 events! With a roster that is in no way, shape, or form built for a 42 event season, with very, very few breaks in between. You want to know why WXW has tour breaks in between? It lets the wrestlers rest up and take independent bookings outside of WXW, with of course the WXW's permission in some cases. But Progress is running 42 events, has to rely heavily on a lot of fly-ins and freelance talent to come into their shows, either from the Lord and Emperor WWE, WXW, or from the Australian promotions, which have a agreement with them, as well as the New Zealand promotions, the few that exist in that tiny island that haven't been mauled to death by rugby players. Seriously, have you ever seen a New Zealand All Blacks game? They are probably one of the most vicious rugby squads I've ever seen in a profession that isn't the Irish. So yeah, anyway, 42 events. They really do think that they're the center of the universe, aren't they? I mean, I could understand and I could respect the confidence and bravado if it was actually earned, but they're banking everything in the kitchen sinks and hoping that this Wembley Stadium show that they're doing, you're noticing a theme in 2018, aren't you? The ginormous big event shows. All in Chicago. The fact that Ring of Honor and New Japan are running a show at a certain garden that we'll be talking about in a little bit. Progress running in Wembley Stadium. The last time anybody did that was SummerSlam 92, I believe. It's all this idea of trying to bring the British wrestling scene back into prominence, but people are forgetting the one big problem in this situation. You're relying on a singular entity to rise your territory from the grave, like an altar beast. You're relying on this to rise it from your grave. Progress is the promotion that you picked. A promotion that completely botched Travis Banks' run as champion, who cannot seem to develop a babyface champion if their lives depended on it. Or if their babyface champion is well around, it gets horribly injured and then has to vacate the belt, so then another heel has to get it. Unless we count Pete Dunne and Jimmy Havoc as babyface champions, because if we're looking at it from that perspective, then well, they have had successful babyface champions because it's a promotion that calls itself a punk rock wrestling promotion. So of course, guys like Dunn and Havoc are gonna be baby faces, even though they were diabolical heels in Progress. So the idea of Progress is the savior now. Like I've said beforehand, I don't really believe in pro wrestling saviors. Anytime that you see somebody proclaiming that they are going to save wrestling, I go, okay, what are we saving it from this week? What half-baked excuse are you going with that you're not going to say, "Oh, we're actually gonna be financially disciplined, and we're gonna develop our roster, and we're gonna develop into other markets, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna do this other thing." But instead, Progress is a promotion that reminds me heavily of, those rock concerts that you would go to, rock and band concerts, the really wild and crazy ones that were in those tiny bars and garages in the 1970s and 80s with a fire code that was literally non-existent in those days. Progress is that band that is having one last tour, one last dance, one last hurrah or huzzah in if you're British. They all seem to believe that the yellow brick road is about to end and the yellow brick road is about to lead them into the land of NXT. But at the same time, Progress isn't thinking 5 years down the road. They're thinking here and now. We have this now. We're going to be doing all this. They're going on a band tour. They are literally going on a musical tour through America, and you better hope and pray that their talent that they're bringing in, like CCK, somehow remains injury free because they've got a lot of wrestlers working on multiple nights and multiple events on these cards. They're not actually utilizing their roster in such a way that is actually effective and reduces the risk of injury. Instead, it is the same people working in different matches against different competitors who are working on the same card. And you go, okay, this is weird. Yes, it's going to sell out. Yes, it's going to be like a crazy rock concert, but crazy rock concert's gonna have a lot of long-term damage to recover from. You got a lot of walls and balconies to, repair from because people have broken everything. What any kind of massive concert does is it leaves behind a lot of debris, a lot of cleanup, and not much else. If you want to develop a wrestling scene, these kind of splash moves are a short-term boost into wrestling, but they're not really a sustainable long-term boost into pro wrestling. That's reliant on the regional promotions actually being professional business people for once and actually trying to develop something that is both profitable for both themselves as a business owner, and profitable for a wrestler who is an independent contractor or person who is an employee, technically. Yes, I kind of consider independent contractors as employees, but at the same time, they're not classified as employees per weird state laws. I don't know. It's a whole tangled web of insanity, and I've talked about unionization before and the pros and cons of trying to implement that into pro wrestling. Basically, the idea of it is it's an interesting idea, but it needs a lot of very specialized paperwork in order to work. So, Progress is going on its Madcap World Tour, which will probably lead to a crashed tour bus and a lot of wrestlers probably eating bats or something. Going all Gene Simmons there, I guess. So, it's not very logical, and there's going to be definitely an element of chaos there, is what I'm saying. So, America, get ready for a British invasion. And no, it's not the Beatles this time. Although it kind of is kind of like the Beatles. 42 events in 1 year, though, that's kind of silly to do. Why didn't they just do 25 events and let the smaller promotions, have their cake as well? But the one benefit of WWE becoming the full vassal state here is it's actually forced the other British promotions to actually book different talent. Why they keep booking Bram, though, is a mystery for yet another time because, this isn't really a full on Donner Party episode, but come on, folks. Bram? Seriously? Really? You're going with Bram over anybody else? But yeah, that's just like, okay. I mean, that's the thing. When you have somebody who's in such a legal situation as Bram, I punched a cop, you know, old cop puncher who's has had domestic violence incidents. The thing is that a regional promotion will look at that guy and go, "Oh, hey, they can't be signed to a major promotion. Oh, we'll make them our regional person." Despite every single logical synapse in a person's brain going, "Why are we booking this person who isn't even all that good of a wrestler from what I can tell?" From the matches I saw him in TNA, he was just basically a typical British deathmatch wrestler without any of the storytelling skills. He's not Jimmy Havoc, folks. He's Bram. Bram, who's as basic as butter and not all that much interesting. Even with all of the other stuff that is horrifically wrong, and we've talked about Bram here on Wacky World of Wrestling, I still go, you're booking this person over anybody else? I'm pretty sure a rookie would get a better drawn results than Bram would. So yeah, there's that elementary chaos of, oh hey, we've got a great promotion, we're doing really well, but yet we also want to shoot ourselves in the foot because we are scared about anything new. We're scared about anything new. We want to be stuck in our own little clique because we're afraid of anything that is unknown. Because that's what the indies are to a certain degree, is a fear of the unknown. Sure, they want to say that they want to do new things and that they want to do different stuff, but there's always that fear and there's always that trepidation of, oh, I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't do this, or I should run my business properly, but I want to do this extreme thing that's going to cause a lot of people to go, why did you just do that? Really, if you have a business plan and you have an area that knows what it is doing and you have a idea of, oh hey, what are we are what are we are what are we going to do here, well, we're not going to what are we not going to do, well, we're going to look at the other promotions and go, what are they doing good and what are they doing wrong? Okay, you look, you analyze, you do the numbers, and you go, okay, we'll do that. So logical deductions, yeah, logic in pro wrestling. It's actually something that could be used more often if you think about it. Although, if you think about it in the context of pro wrestling, it might cause your brain to explode. But then again, such is the risk of seeking seeking that knowledge. Just don't go for the unlimited power route. That has a lot more drawbacks than you would think. So yeah, Progress is going to go all Gene Simmons and probably eat a bat. And Rev Pro has signed a chained contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling, which also segues into our next segment. Remember how I said how crazy people have a tendency to outdo Vince? Well, James Dolan apparently wants to invest into the sports entertainment business. Unfortunately, it's not you this time. Yes, tonight on All My Arenas, Madison Square Garden seeks new people. Meanwhile, WWE's corporate office is inundated with hundreds of thousands of unsold best of editions of James Dolan's country folk music band. Because Madison Square Garden is going to be doing a super show with Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling on April 6th. Yes, April 6th, 2019. You know, the week of WrestleMania? Oh, this soap opera drama just got so much more interesting, didn't it? Yes, folks. James Dolan has gone completely mad. He wants to sell the Knicks and the Rangers to somebody else. And if you look at a New York Post article that was written up about the potential sale of the Knicks and Rangers, you'll note that he wants to invest into sports entertainment. Gee willikers, you don't mean professional wrestling now, do you? And not with WWE, but with Ring of Honor and New Japan? You know, promotions that MSG, while MSG itself has had a 52-year relationship with WWE, they've also had, I don't know, a pretty good relationship with Sinclair Media, which is the company that owns Ring of Honor. So, evil corporate entity versus crazy man who owns buildings versus Satan versus extraordinarily confused former head of Tomy and Coca-Cola Japan. I mean, if this leads to like All In 2 and George Burroughs does a special match with Harold Menji. So, Uncle Harold versus Barros Bingo, trademark WrestleNomics, in a main event match at All In 2. And it's actually an idea I've actually proposed to the WrestleNomics guys as a booking idea. And they reacted quite well to it. It's like, That's the greatest main event ever. Like, coolness. It's like, well, the thing is that oftentimes the corporate world of professional wrestling is oftentimes more interesting than the in-ring stuff. And well, that's kind of the case this Swiss Week with Wacky World of Wrestling. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about this whole MSG thing on the next episode, but I think we've run about an hour or so. It's about 4:31 a.m. on this particular broadcast. And for those of you who are about to tune in, thank you so much for watching the 45th episode of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. There is a link in the on the Twitter profile. You can follow me on Twitter at Fizzpatrick14. I've been doing a lot of these solo shows recently, and they've been quite fun and quite enjoyable, especially since I can do them at random intervals and random times. I'll also provide a recap link for episode 44, which is the games of corporate business and bingo halls episode. Can't really remember exactly the show title, but then there's also the Donner Party episode that I did about the CEOX New Japan show. But, this has been Logical Deductions and Elementary Chaos. These shows are really fun to put together, and I'm glad I was able to do something a bit odd for the 45th episode. And hope that my slightly random, somewhat tangential, but also not random tangent episode was something that was interesting for you to listen to. Like I said, there's going to be a link on the Twitter profile at Fizzpatrick14. And this has been William Fitzpatrick. And have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll see you on the next episode of Wacky World of Wrestling, episode 46. That I don't know what it's going to be about this time around. Might be something new, might be something different, might be something that's the same. But until then, have a good day or night, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll see you next time. Bye.